something. And I'll tell you, honestly, I will love it if we beat them. Love it.
Yes, everyone, what's going on? Welcome back to another edition of The Warm Down. Delighted today to be joined by Ian Irving, Manchester correspondent for the Premier League and also on MUTV. You might recognise his voice. If you're overseas, you should recognise his face as well. We don't get a Premier League channel over here, do we? It seems to be worldwide, bar England.
Yeah, it's a rights issue, isn't it? I mean, we service all the international rights holders, so Sky and BT are the rights holders in the UK. They don't take our stuff because it's all for the international lot. So, I don't know if you guys, TV2 Norway, things will be shown on there. NBC in America.
That beIN and all that sort of stuff.
beIN in the Middle East. I could be here all day, mate, yeah. Everywhere, basically.
But, like I said to you before when you came in, but I did hear your voice this morning, on Saturday morning, talking to Pogba, obviously. So a lot of those interviews that you get coming out of the training ground, and that is a lot of them is you usually doing those.
Yeah, and depending on contracts and agreements between broadcasters and stuff like that, BBC are part of that agreement, Sky are part of that agreement. It's really complicated, to be honest, mate. And I'm sure no one at home is that interested, to be fair.
There's probably a couple that was like, I was definitely... If you're interested, comment below. What would you say the mood's changed like? Because it must have changed. Come on.
Right.
There's not even one... Maybe Scott McTominay's like, I don't think it's any different.
We were saying this the other day, right? You know, if you look across that squad, and it's only really because he's not played and he's been injured. I think Alexis Sanchez is probably the only player, really, a major player, that you've not seen a difference in. Every single player almost. Yeah, but even Lukaku, when he's actually come on,
I guess he's
making an impact, you know. And he's played in the FA Cup and played all right against Reading. Scored goals, you know, even though he's only started one of the games. I think he's got 3 goals. But Steve, go into the training ground, interviewing the players, even speaking to Kath behind reception. You know, it's just totally different. It's just, you can even feel it going into the place, you know. And that's not me, you know, having a go at Jose necessarily, because. Again, we could be here all day dissecting the rights and wrongs of what happened there, but Ollie just seems to have... It's a massive cliche, and I'm sorry, but he just seems to have just like this smiley, happy, positive, optimistic nature about him, and it really has been contagious. And I think because Mourinho wasn't like that...
I think because it's polar opposites, it's more noticeable than it would have been.
It leaves like a vacuum almost. You know, people want that smiley, happy nature. And I'm not just talking about players, I'm talking about anyone around the club, staff around the training ground, you know, people even working in the offices at Old Trafford, because the manager does have an effect on everyone. I don't think you can overplay that. He does dictate a lot. Not necessarily in terms of like what jobs people are doing, but just how people feel. And results obviously have a massive indication towards that as well. But I think because there's like this vacuum left where people want to be happy and smiley coming into work. They want to be positive and optimistic about what's going on. It's been a much more sort of exaggerated change, if you know what I mean. And obviously, results have helped. If you win 7 matches in a row, everyone's going to be happy. You know, if Jose was in there and had won 7 matches in a row, no matter anything, everyone would have been happy because results sort of mask everything, don't they, really?
I was looking at the fixture list the other day, and it was before we got to 6 and then 7, and was looking at, like, when was the last time we did actually win 5 on the bounce?
Yeah.
If you look, it didn't actually come as 5 on the bounce because we had the Sevilla games in the middle of it, but we actually had a period last season under Jose where we beat Chelsea, City and Liverpool in a 5-game win streak in the league, and you're like, I don't remember that.
It feels like a long time ago, that, doesn't it?
Hang on.
You know,
actually, we did do that.
I think Simon Stone asked the question, he works for the BBC, after the match on Saturday to Ollie in the press conference. He sort of said, within the question, that this was the second longest run they'd had winning matches in all competitions since Ferguson had left. And that just gives you an idea about... Because these sort of runs should be normal for a club like United. They've been normal for... If I'm allowed to say it, City and Liverpool this season, City certainly last year, you know, Chelsea when they won the league. It's pretty standard to have this sort
of
run.
Even Arsenal this season.
Yeah, 22 matches unbeaten, I think they were at one point, which again, you know, that feels like a long time ago.
Level on points with United.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Shitheads.
It's crazy, like... Because, I mean, I was watching some of the things from like October, November, sort of talking about the way United were at the time and the way people were talking about it, even the way sort of my friends were talking about it and things like that. And back then, You know, there was a lot of praise going around for Emery. There was a lot of praise going around for Sarri as well. And even when Ollie took over, you know, you're talking 11 points away from the top 4. People were saying to me, "Do you think they can do it?" I was like, absolutely no chance.
Really? Is that what you felt at the time?
Yeah, because
I thought there was a chance. I didn't think it was. I wouldn't have been putting money on it anyway.
To catch 1, yes. To catch 2, unlikely, because then Chelsea and Arsenal were both roughly 11 points ahead. So I could see 1 falling from grace quite a lot. But I couldn't see both of them doing it, and certainly not this quickly.
3 points?
Yeah, 3 points, and Spurs not that far away now. You know, I think Solskjaer said after the Wembley win that third wasn't out of the question, which is interesting. He sort of has to say that in a way as well, because you've got to keep those targets. But
I wonder what the target was, because they would have had a sat down with the owners and Woodward when he came in, and I wonder what the target was, because one of the targets could have just been turn the mood round, mate.
I think that would have been.
Yeah, I think that might have been one of the targets.
I wouldn't be surprised if that was almost the only target in the short term.
And just see what happens for the rest of it.
And change things. Because another thing now as well, and the media does this, and fans do this, and I think everyone does it in a way, but now because he's made the start that he's made, it's like, right, he has to get the job now. Surely he's got to get the job. He's done an incredible job already.
I just think a minimum 30-year contract would be sensible at this stage, I think. Just 30 years.
Yeah, well, maybe just 6 years like David Moyes, perhaps. I don't know. But I just think now it's gone so well. I think it's gone better than anyone expected, probably even including the club and Solskjaer himself. I think just be cool and calm about it. Still go through the process that you want to go through. Still make the right type of decisions for the club going forward. I was listening to Gary Neville a couple of weeks back, and he was saying no one should be allowed to come in again and shape Manchester United's culture, the philosophy. And I agree with that. Maybe not completely, because there's going to have to be some leeway along the way. There's going to have to be some adaptation to different managers.
Evolution, probably.
Yeah, and also, you know, there's lots of trends in football. You've got to pay attention to the trends and sort of move with that and mould with that and try and get the best out of your team as you can based on how other teams are playing. Not long ago, everyone was 3-man defences, weren't they, because Chelsea won the league with that. Not that long ago, everyone was 4-4-2. And, you know, these things do go in cycles. So I understand what Neville's getting at. And I just think they've been talking about a director of football. I'm 100% certain that will happen. I know that the club is looking at the moment, are working through that process. Again, there's no rush. They don't want to be rushed. They want to take the time and make sure they've got the right candidate. I imagine it will be in line with someone who is coming in as manager as well, whether that be Solskjaer or someone else, and that those two, they can see how that working relationship would go as well. And I think that's a sensible thing for United, because the last few appointments, whilst there's been good moments, with Mourinho especially, you know, he won trophies, he was successful, he made United expect to win again, to a degree. Van Gaal won the FA Cup.
He came second with a very respectable amount of points. Let's not take anything away from some of the other off-field issues. And we sort of limped in at the end of the season as well. We didn't finish strong. Yeah,
and they won the Europa League and they won the League Cup and they got to the FA Cup final. I mean, you know,
for most clubs, bad period.
I was going to say for most clubs, that's not bad going, really, is it? And I think it's just a desperation with United a little bit. It's just that desperation to get back to where they were.
Well,
and it was such a lot.
It's also who's running away with it.
Yeah,
it's the two leaders of the league, which is making things focus for United.
And last season, the fact that City did what they did as well, and Liverpool did what they did as well. Okay, in the league, you know, it wasn't like they were above United or anything like that. But getting to a Champions League final and the nerves that a lot of United fans were feeling as they were kicking off against Real Madrid, you know, exactly that type of feeling.
It could be worse, and it could very much happen this season, and it could be the Premier League goes to Liverpool. And City managed to do a Champions League because they're favourites currently.
Yeah.
And we end up with 2 new names on both of them trophies. And I am deactivating every social media from. I'm going to go all the way back to MySpace and just disappear.
You've got to take it as it comes. And actually,
North Sentinel Island, population of 39. Yeah. We're going to make that 3.9 million just full of United fans.
Well, they'll all have social media by the end of it anyway. No, you won't be able to escape it. I'm sure one of those 39's a Liverpool fan and a United fan. That's how it works. That's part of my job, really, to get people watching the Premier League. So, but I think if that did happen, if Liverpool did win the Premier League, or City won the Champions League, or, you know, Tottenham win the Champions, anyone, I don't think it will happen.
That's a pretty safe bet.
Yeah, that is a safe bet, yeah, especially because Kane's out until whenever and whatever. Anyway, you've taken me off on a tangent I didn't want to go on.
That's what I do.
No matter who wins it, if it's an English club, I can only see that ultimately benefiting the Premier League and benefiting United, because the standard will go higher. That means that United's standard week in, week out would have to go higher. And you're getting back then maybe to the sort of like mid-noughties where you had teams every single season in the Champions League final.
9-10 seasons, we had an English finalist in every single one.
And all England final that United
3
won.
semi-finalists, consecutive years.
Yeah, 3 out of 4. Exactly. So if you're getting back to that, that shows you that the standard right across the board has raised. And hopefully, if the Premier League can do that again, because United, even when they've been a disaster, it's 6th place, isn't it? The idea of being back in the top 4, back competing for the big trophies, it will drive everyone forward. Not that I'm trying to find a silver lining of these teams winning these trophies, because I don't suppose there is one for United fans, but I do think that it'll drive the standard up. You'll be all right, mate.
I won't
Don't
be
worry.
Right. I really won't be.
It's a bit of a bunker in here anyway, so you could probably live here for a while and no one would know.
I reckon.
No, okay.
I reckon the parade's probably about 100 metres down the road, isn't it?
So Liverpool are going to redirect it 35 miles just to go past.
No, I mean the other lot.
Yeah.
Mind you, they don't make a lot of noise because there's not many of them. They all come on the same bus and go on the same bus. So
you said that, mate. Yeah.
Dissect Solskjaer's reign then. So you're thinking it might be a bit premature to start anointing him the job now, which, if I'm being sensible, of course it is.
Yeah. By the way, you're allowed to get carried away.
I have been. Don't
worry. And all United fans are allowed to get carried away. If your team's winning matches like United have been doing over the past month, you're definitely allowed to get carried away. And you're also allowed to back him for the job, in my eyes.
And with the stuff he's been saying, you couldn't have wrote it better.
The people I've spoken to have literally said, if I was sat in that seat
as a fan,
I'd be saying that. And
probably not even as good as he said it.
Oh no, he's actually summed it up better than you could. But he is on message, in terms of that. And you said at the top about speaking to Pogba last week. One of the things that Paul said was that it's almost like having Fergie back, having Solskjaer around when it comes to training and things like that, because the training Mike feeling will help that, obviously. Sure. But having him around, taking the training sessions and working on the drills and things like that, a lot of the stuff's the same. A lot of the stuff, the warm ups, using some of the boxes, is like what Ferguson did. So there's a bit in there.
It felt like a Fergie appointment. Now, I'm sure it wasn't Fergie that actually signed the paperwork, pressed the button, did whatever he had to do.
No.
I think Ed Woodward had to probably Google who Mike Phelan was. So I'm pretty sure that this was, if not Fergie's direct appointment, I think he was a very strong advocate for this coaching team that's come in, because it is a full team. And I loved there was a scene they cut to during the Spurs game where you saw Kieran McKenna furiously scribbling away and the whole team looking at what he was doing and discussing it, and I'm like, I like that. This is a team. It's not it's not a one-man reign like Jose's was, where people might be nervously giving him a bit of info and he'd be like, no, I'm in charge.
I was a bit concerned about that team initially. Trying to think what match it would have been. Working pitch side, probably the first home game. So Bournemouth, was it? Huddersfield? One of those two around just before Christmas or Boxing Day, whichever one it was. And seeing the four of them, and where we are is literally next to the away dugout, so you're pretty close. You can't quite hear what they're saying, but you can certainly keep a close eye on who's talking to who and what sort of instructions are being given out. And I looked at that and thought, normally in a team, you'd maybe have 2 people who'd come down to the technical area, so giving out instructions in game, 1 or 2 people maybe. In that setup for United, there was 4 people coming down to the touchline, each of them talking to players, and each of them giving their own sort of instructions and sort of view on the game, which they're all very well qualified people. 2 very young, promising coaches. Carrick's had an incredible football career as well, which automatically gives him an insight. Mike Phelan's done what he's done as a coach as well, and obviously as a player before. And then Ollie as manager, who has to have the overriding say, surely, in that setup. So I was looking at that thinking, it's a lot of voices, that. It's a lot of different brains.
It could go west, unless they're all on the same message.
But going back to what you were saying, it seems to be working really well, and they actually seem to complement each other. And clearly, Ollie must have gone through and thought, right, who's going to do what? Who's going to have a say where? And if you look at that Tottenham first half, I wasn't sure that this United had that in them yet. Because if you look over the Christmas period, he's had so little time, to work with this team tactically, to go through all the different bits that you'd need to put that sort of performance together.
Dubai was really key.
And that was exactly what I was about to say. That week that they've had, or 4 or 5 days, whatever it was, over there, just working on different tactics,
It's not just a 9 to 5, is it? I mean, it's not even 9 to 5. It's like 10 till 2 in it that most of these Premier League players are coming in.
Yeah.
And if you tried to call them in at tea time, they'd be like, "Get bent, mate. I'm not coming in for that." Or if you tried at 10 o'clock, let's have a meeting, they'd be like, "Go fuck yourself. I'm not coming in for that." But when you're away in Dubai, you're eating together as a squad. You're constantly in that environment where you can put a meeting on at 10 o'clock at night. Is a bit of shape. You can put something on where you look back at maybe some of the last fixtures and go, "Joe, we've done this great. This needs a bit of work," and it doesn't feel like you're taking a piss out of the players because you've took them away to go and do this.
Yeah, well, you can also take time over what you're doing. You know, you're not under that same sort of pressure. I saw Marcus post on Instagram a bit of a joke sort of thing, sitting down with Martial and Lingard, I think it was. You know, Ollie saying like, "Oh, this is what Teddy gave it me, and the rest is history," sort of thing. But and I'm sure it was a joke, but you can imagine the level of sort of focus and focused time Ollie had to speak to the players in that scenario. And I know from speaking to Solskjaer himself really early on that Marcus was one of the players he intended on doing one-on-one time with, a lot of focus one-on-one time with, about his finishing, about how he...
And how obvious has that been paid off?
I know, yeah, I know. But it's always obvious when it works out. It's always obvious when it works out. I saw a difference in Marcus before Solskjaer came in anyway. Again, speaking to the players, you know, over a period of time, you get an idea of sort of the headspace that some of them are in. And it just seems to be a coincidence, but we seem to have spoken to Marcus directly after his birthday every year. Early November, his birthday is Halloween, I think, isn't it? And this year we spoke to him just after being 21. And that's the most relaxed, composed, articulate interview I've ever done with Marcus. Not that he was sort of... Not that he struggled before.
I think he's quiet. I think he's just his
personality. I was going to say he's shy.
Quiet, yeah.
He's quite a shy guy. He's quite uncomfortable. And he's a young lad. You know, we expect these players to be great at playing football because that's the job. But as a journalist, as a reporter, you know, you're also expecting them to be able to talk and communicate things and give you insight.
Obviously, they're not working hours and hours a day on that, are they?
No, but, you know, some of them should. Because it's not going to do him any harm. And it's a massive part of the job now. I'm going to be biased saying that. People are probably sat watching this saying, well, you would say that because, you know, it's in your interest. But at the same time, you know, if you watch an interview like Pogba at Football Focus at the weekend, or any of the guys who would have seen our stuff around the world over the weekend, if Pogba comes across well in that interview, then that can affect your opinion of these players. Especially if, now maybe not so much, because Pogba, like Marcus, has been incredible the last few weeks, but especially at a time when it wasn't going that well for Paul. We spoke to him towards the end of last season, you know, and there was a lot of thorny issues and a lot of, you know, difficult questions to ask around that sort of time. And how he came across then was really positive, you know, sensible, bright in the way he was speaking. He understood, you know, what he could and couldn't say in that circumstance. And I think watching that as a fan at home or as another journalist or whoever yourself, you know, I think you'd be affected. Your opinion of him would be quite heavily affected by how he came across in that interview, because that's part of our role, really. We should be speaking to these people and asking the sort of questions that fans would want to ask. You know, that's essentially what we're there for. You know, trying to make the players accountable for different things and stuff like that. So, you know, I do think players should spend more time on it, to be honest.
I'd love to see them also actually be honest, because I know that they hold so much back, and I know that the club probably asks them to hold so much back. Because I think a lot of the time that we saw, certainly with Jose's press conferences, you can almost write his answers. I mean, sometimes he comes out of absolutely nowhere, and you go, what? Like the Sevilla game, that was strike one for me, because that was mental. But some of the times he just comes out with, and you just think, what's the point in these press conferences? Because there's going to be 10 journalists that ask stuff that he's either not going to answer, or the answer is, no, it's the most simple, basic answer you could ever get. But the difference that you're getting with, like you said, Ollie's coming out and saying things that we as fans probably even couldn't articulate as well as he could himself, and it is driving the mood of the fans, whereas it was having the opposite effect, I think, under Mourinho. Mourinho was taken away a little bit, and he was almost doing himself a disservice because there was no connection with us and Mourinho. Jose really sort of... There was one time he let his guard down, and that was when we qualified for the Europa League final. He stood at the bottom of Stretford and twirled that scarf around. That was the one time he let the mask slip.
Yeah.
Whereas it feels like, Ollie's always like saluting the crowd and fist bumping at the crowd and stuff like that, and you feel like that guy feels like he's on our team. It doesn't feel like... Jose felt like he was doing stuff in spite of us. Whereas Ollie feels like he's doing it because of us.
So Jose, to your mind, was doing things for him, and Solskjaer is doing things for the club.
Might just be his personality.
Yeah.
But just the way he came across in those was...
You're not the only person who said that, and that's not even just about his time at United, that's about his whole career. He's an interesting character, isn't he? Because he's so different.
You've had a lot of one-on-ones with him as well, haven't you?
Yeah, we did. Again, we get quite a lot of access in that sense. And you're talking about people not thinking about what they're saying in interviews or spending hours prepping for them. Jose always knew what he was saying. And another thing with interviews is, players, I think, especially younger ones, often think that the interview's about what I ask. Well, no, an interview is always about what they say. I can ask whatever I want.
You'll never get quoted.
No, well, it's not even that. In fact, I could try and have an idea. Like you could try and have an idea about how this chat's going to go. But it's ultimately what I say and how I react to your questions a little bit as to how it goes. And Jose, you could act like a politician. You could ask him anything you wanted. And if you didn't want to go into that, he'd either ignore it or he'd just doff his cap to it and then take you off in a totally different direction. And he was always smart in the way that he always knew how it all worked. He always knew what the line could be, what he could make the line, and take it off on its tangent. So you ended up talking about something totally different, deflecting from bad results. He was absolutely incredible at that. We even got to the point with Jose where we were talking about him deflecting off bad results. So we weren't actually deflecting off bad results. The deflection was to talk about the deflection. Even when he was like kicking the water bottles and stuff like that in the Champions League, it became about that rather than about the result. Even though we all knew he was kicking water bottles because he wanted us to talk about that and not talk about the way that the game had gone.
I think there's probably an element of that in the Sevilla press conference, but the Sevilla press conference pissed me off.
Yeah, I think he probably just misjudged it. I mean, no one's perfect, are they, in that sense? He's very, very good, but I'm sure there's still moments where even he gets it wrong. There's just a big difference between Jose and Ollie, in personality-wise, in experience-wise, in how much they've been exposed to what United is and was.
What do you think Solskjaer needs to do to get the job then? As a legitimate candidate, do you think 7 games out of 7 is enough?
Just carry on what he's doing. I honestly don't think there's a rush, because he isn't the first caretaker manager to come in and turn things around. Maybe not quite this dramatically, maybe not quite this successfully, but on the face of it, United is still 6th. There's still work to be done there. He says that himself.
But I think that's pretty arbitrary, because the amount of points that you've clawed back off everyone ahead of you is ridiculous.
Yeah, but the point I'm making is they've not won anything yet.
No, we haven't.
They've won a few football matches, and they've won the majority of them well. They played better. They played more how we would expect them to play. He's getting the maximum, it feels like, out of players. He's squeezing the potential out of Rashford. He's squeezing it out of Pogba.
There's this big argument about how much impact a manager truly has. And I think you can always get a manager that will get a team to play to their potential. But you can also have a manager that doesn't manage to get a team to play to their potential, or lessens that team's impact away from the potential. And I think the team that we had, actually, I bought into Jose's hype that this team was worse than he was making out. But I still think this United team is the 3rd best team in the country, as a collective between the manager and the squad. And I think that the Spurs team could be better than us, but I think Pochettino deadens that a little bit. I think that's his impact on that team, is he takes them away from being the winners that they probably could be. I think their 11's probably better than Liverpool's, but Liverpool's top of the league.
You think Pochettino weakens Spurs?
I really do.
Why do you think that?
Because I think that their 11, on paper, competes with City and is better than Liverpool, but they don't win things. And his ability to build the squad, phenomenal. But his ability to turn that squad into the potential of winning trophies, which is all we're here for at the end of the day, I don't think he does that. And his attitude to it, some of the things he says in press conferences make me want to throw up. Like, if he was United manager, it would not fly. And it would be headline news if a United manager says it, but he gets away with it.
It is different in that sense, yeah. I think with Pochettino, though, you look at the amount of money that Tottenham have had to spend compared to the others. You look at the wage budgets and the structure. Look now at the number of injuries they've got in that team, and yet they're still winning football matches.
Depth-wise, yeah, I totally agree. You can improve what Tottenham have got. But if I had to give you 100 million in the summer, how would you improve the starting 11 at Spurs?
Yeah, I take your point on that. I mean, you could. I don't think the full-backs are brilliant. I don't think central midfield is as good as it could be. And, you know...
But you're going to struggle,
I know.
It's not like United where you go, I'll give you 100 million, you go, sound. I'm going to get that and that.
Well, not now, no. You're all right now.
Oh, I don't know about that. I think we still need to...
Defence is definitely an issue for it. But what about Victor Lindelof? I mean, I don't know how much you guys have spent sort of looking at how he's done in recent weeks, but... You know, he just looks more of a United player. I
think he's been quite fortunate in that a lot of the teams that we've played play a particular style. I think he really struggles about that more direct sort of team. And I think a lot of the times that you saw the likes of Fellaini played really well against the likes of Burnley, and there was someone else around about that time as well. It might have been Brighton.
What, early in the season?
Watford, yeah. I can't remember who it was. But you saw Fellaini deployed and played well in like a number 6 kind of role. The reason that he was playing well and the reason he was in that number 6 role is that Lindelof's garbage in the air. That direct ball that comes right down the barrel towards him, he really struggles with that. If you put it in a channel for him, I think he mops that up all day long. I think his reading of the game from those areas is
very good. Yeah.
And I think he deals with that kind of threat quite well. I think he deals with marking quite well. What I think he struggles with is when the ball's in the air and he's got a bit of a bully of a centre forward, I think that's where he gets caught out. I don't like his heading. So I think that's a way he can improve. I think he's been quite fortunate recently that a lot of the teams that we've played, you know, even coming right through from the Juventus and the Everton games where he looked fantastic, a lot of that I think was on the back of having a particular style of play played at him.
Yeah. I'd take your point on that, definitely. I think he needs to be a bit nastier as well.
Yeah, but I think his confidence is probably going to be massively raised by both the praise and his consistency in his performances.
Playing every week as well, you know, playing if you have a bad game or bad moments in games, playing through it, you know, that's definitely a positive, especially someone who's still relatively new to English football. We do a pre-season media day at all the clubs. You know, the guys have probably seen some of the pictures that are taken with the new kits.
That's the boy band stuff in it that they use on Sky.
Yeah, exactly. The walk-ups, you know, the old school green screen walk-ups that some of the international lots still use. So I looked after the one at United this year, and part of it is just making sure that players are match ready, I think they call it. They're holding the name up. Every player has to do it, home and away, all that sort of stuff. And a parallel from 2 players. Paul Pogba had a diamond earring in. So I said, Paul, can you take your earring out? He said, do I have to take my earring out? Yeah, you know, you've got to be match ready. Right, okay, all right, right. So then eventually, after making a bit of fuss, he does it. Victor Lindelof comes over and he had his wedding ring on. So I said, oh, sorry, Victor, you have to take your wedding ring off because you've got to be match ready. And he's like, oh, it don't really come off. And he was like proper pulling at it. You could see like it was straining.
Did you tape it up or something for a match?
Well, I'll come on to it. So I said to him, he needs to come, right, okay. Wait a minute. So he stood there, spitting on his hand to get his wedding ring off. It took him about 2 or 3 goes, and then sort of didn't hand it. I was thinking he's going to hand it to me now, and it's full of his. Yeah. got one of the assistants over who was sort of looking after the players with a bit of tissue. She took the ring off him in a bit of tissue. He did the thing, and then he went and put it back on, and then he came over then to do the away kit after he'd done the home kit. Exactly the same thing. I thought, oh, what a nice guy. But then you sort of think, that's great, but you sort of want them to be that little bit more nastier, you know, a little bit more unpleasant. Almost tell me where to go if you know the wedding ring's not coming off. It's not coming off, you know. So I think whilst that's probably a bit extreme because you're talking about someone in a personal capacity compared to a professional capacity. That just gave me sort of a little bit of an insight to think maybe I want him to be a bit more streetwise than that.
Call it Iceman.
Yeah.
Because it's cool, I think.
Well, he could get his ring off if it's all cold as well.
It's
yeah,
nicely lubed up.
Yeah,
yeah. I think there's been one of the big changes, and we sort of touched on this just before we went live as well. Is the way he's ghosted out a lot of the players that you would think. Well, for starters, they played every week under Jose.
Yeah.
And actually, that forward 3, Lingard was kind of in and out a little bit, but Marcus, Lingard, Martial. Apart from like the very end of Jose's reign, you didn't see that as a United forward 3. Sanchez, Mata, Lukaku was way more prevalent than those 3.
Yeah, because of how well it's gone, I think, and because there's been so much to talk about that's new, i.e. United winning every week and consistently and scoring goals and entertaining. Yeah, and Rashford's form and Pogba's form, you know, we've not really, as a media and not really sort of analysed some of the decisions that Solskjaer's made, and I actually think he deserves more credit than perhaps he's got so far, because you're not talking about minor footballers. I mean, with Lukaku, you know, I know he was sort of away I think for that first game at Cardiff because of his compassionate leave, but he's been back now for the majority of this month, and he's not forced his way back into the team. And on reputation alone, it felt like he was getting in the team before. Sanchez has not been fit really, but when he has been back fit and available, he's been sat on the bench, and it's not even like you felt a pressure for him to come on. Oh, Sanchez on the bench, he needs to bring him on, you know. He just sort of managed all that, and I guess, like I said before, winning games mask everything, you know. The level of scrutiny on these type of decisions is less when you're winning matches, I suppose. But Mata's not played as much. Fellaini and Fred have been not even making match day squads, and again, on reputations, you'd be expecting them to be getting in that squad comfortably, you know, if not in the team with Fred.
Last week, it looks like Jimmy Garner has replaced Fellaini in the matchday squad. Yeah. I was like, I got all the time in the world for that. Yeah,
well, again, you know, that's brave, that, because he doesn't have to do that. You know, in some ways, it's much easier just to pick Fellaini because
just in the travelling squad at least, yeah.
Yeah, because Jimmy Garner's not going to complain if he's not in the squad, is he?
Probably not.
You know,
no.
I'm sure exactly, but I'm sure Fellaini would have something to say about that. Sanchez, I mean, it's a little different because obviously you've still got an expectation from the likes of Jesse and Marcus and Anthony to play. But Sanchez is definitely going to expect to start every game.
Considering he's on about 17.5 billion a week,
I'm
sure that's going to force everyone's hand into playing him. But yeah, I think he's managed the ego that's probably quite clearly there with Sanchez. I'm sure Lukaku's not quiet. Oh yeah, but I'm sure Lukaku's not quiet.
That's why they are where they are.
He might be managing Lukaku perfectly because while he's been out of form, while he's been overweight, all of these things that are playing on his mind. There's obviously whatever happened with the compassionate leave. I'm not sure it's actually broke whatever that was, has it? So while all of those things are going on, why do we need to give him the pressure of starting matches and maybe not performing while Marcus is on fire?
Yeah, he's not looked himself for some time as well. You're not talking about a little blip where it's perhaps been a dodgy month or something like that. You know, he's not looked like the striker that United signed, I'd say, this season. You know, he had a positive World
Yeah, I think he struggled from the World Cup. He came back out of shape from that. And then that's just been exacerbated by playing week in, week out.
Yeah, and a lot of players. He's not the only player who's gone deep into that World Cup and struggled with form. Not all of them have. I mean, some of them have been amazing. You know,
I was pulling my hair out. On our previews, I was like, I know he's going to play him, but I'm not picking Matic until he drops him, just because I wanted him out of the squad because he looked good. But the first game, Solskjaer comes back. Like, I think someone needs to check his piss because that was ridiculous. Like he's been running around like a maniac.
But and also, I think. Players just look energised by what's going on around them. You know, people are working harder. You've probably looked at some of the sprint stats. The sprint stats are through the roof compared to other parts of the season.
That's what's not changed for Marcus, because Marcus is someone that does that all the time. But was it in the first game with Cardiff, United have actually outrun our opponent for the first time?
I think it was the first time this season.
Which is a piss take.
Yeah, and part of that style, you know, a lot of people saying, oh, they're not fit, that's why it's that. I think part of it's style and what they're being asked to do, and also how they're reacting to games and, you know, how they're sort of managing themselves through the matches as well. But, you know, Tottenham away, for example, the level of high-intensity sprints, even in the first half alone, was through the roof. I mean, they were struggling a bit towards the end of the second half.
Well, we held on, didn't we? I mean, we held on thanks to some superhero shit from De Gea.
Standard.
Not like Lloris was there, you know, twiddling his thumbs. No, we give him plenty to do as well. We could have been more up than we was. I think we probably scored at a bit of an awkward time. We go in at half-time ahead, and I think Poch puts a rocket up Spurs, and he's like, you need to go and score right now. And they came out with that mindset, and we might have slipped into the old Jose mindset of don't concede.
Well, you say that, but they still had 8 shots on target in that game, you know, and the old Jose...
We didn't press the same.
No, I know what you mean. The intensity dropped, definitely. They dropped deeper as well. And the more worrying thing, I think, was the fact that they could create 11 opportunities to shoot on target in the second half. And then maybe only 2 or 3 of those were real sort of speculative.
It reminded me of a little bit was the Liverpool game at Anfield where they just marched right through the middle of us. And it's like, what is going on?
And that was from the start as well, wasn't it, that day? And, you know, I think that is the one area that's not been completely transformed, should we say. I think individually players are playing better, but as a collective...
That takes me back to the point of a manager only gets the team up to their potential.
Yeah.
You can't turn Burnley into Barcelona. you can only get them playing to their potential. And I think Jose had us playing under our potential.
Well, maybe it's coaching time as well, Steve, because, going back to the point before, they've not had masses of time in between matches over that Christmas period.
They come in, it's recover, here's your tactics for weekend, get after it.
I asked Solskjaer that exact question in the lead up to the Spurs game. He came back late on, was it the Thursday night from Dubai, held a press conference at 8:30 at night, I think, which went down very well with the press back, as you can imagine.
They had to do a bit, did they?
Yeah, late. Yeah, we had to work past our bedtimes, yeah. So we went into that, and I sort of said to her, I said, are we going to see your United now? Because you've had this coaching time with the players. Because that was a big thing for me, that it was almost like they were bouncing from game to game. Everything was going well. 5 past Cardiff, great, bounce into the next game. 3 past them, 4 past them, bounce. Not a lot of time in between, recovery and prep time,
Even the transformation from his first game was so stark.
Yeah.
It was so stark.
Yeah, but, didn't expect them to win as convincingly as they did, but I certainly expected there to be a reaction, because there often is when a manager goes. It wasn't that. It was
the manner of changes. It wasn't just like, things are a little bit different. No, on the Wednesday, I don't know if I spoke to you about this. I watched 7 hours of Mulder on the Wednesday he was appointed.
Yeah,
I was having a
lot
of new radiators fitting at home, and I had to be there, and I was like, well, I'm doing this all fucking day today, so I put loads of Mulder on and watched them, and I come up with some notes about how they play, and to be honest, they're very Klopp-ish. The way they played. What you didn't see, there's a bit more pondering sometimes, which Liverpool fans are in complete denial about how Liverpool get the ball forward. And what we saw with United wasn't what we'd seen previously with Ole. The press was there, the playing out from the back, those things was there, but that directness, and I wonder who is the man in that team that's directing that. Michael Carrick played like that, but does he coach like that? We wouldn't know until he tells us.
No, but
Mike Phelan?
I've heard some players talk about Carrick's influence on things like that, and about showing players individual clips. This is going back, even I think, after the derby maybe last year, 3-2 at the Etihad. Pogba saying about how important Carrick was in pointing out the areas in which he could make those type of runs and score the type of goals he scored 2 on the day, of course. So he would have had an influence, and I think, speaking to people around the club, it sounds like Carrick and McKenna have got more of it. They had a say before, of course, because they were Jose's assistant, but maybe they have even more of a say now under Solskjaer, going back to that idea we were talking about before, as the collective working together and working through things. So what did it for me with Cardiff was Martial's goal. I just couldn't remember at that point the last time. I'm sure United have scored goals like that, but it gets clouded with all the other noise and all the other issues around it.
That was phenomenal.
I just can't remember that level of football being played, and the one-touch positivity and just the class of it, really. Just hasn't happened enough, has it, really? And going back to what you were saying before, I sort of bought into what Jose was saying in terms of looking at the team and him saying we have to play this way because we can't leave it open at the back. We have to play that way, and I want these players to be more consistent, and they're not giving me that consistency. And I was watching it thinking, well, I sort of get it. Maybe perhaps the defence isn't as good as it could be. Perhaps looking at the attacking players, they're not consistent.
They're not consistent. Sanchez isn't consistent. Pogba's not being consistent, and you're like, yeah, what you're saying is bang on. I'm seeing what you're saying. You're not telling me it's champagne and pissing in my mouth. I'm looking at what you're saying, and I'm going, I totally agree with that. But then you see the difference when they're playing. There's this. We've got to go back to the same thing with Pochettino. Is he a better manager than Solskjaer? Maybe he's not, because he hasn't won anything. Maybe he is. Maybe he isn't.
I don't know.
Jose Mourinho was the best manager in the world.
Yeah.
And Louis van Gaal was in the mix for a very good manager, if not one of the top available managers in the world. Yeah. And it didn't work for them.
I think you're being harsh on Pochettino, to be honest.
Well, I'm not. I'm actually blowing him up and saying he probably is better than Solskjaer if you look at it holistically.
Well, if you look at
he's considered better than Solskjaer, but Mourinho was considered one of the best in the world. It didn't work. What if Solskjaer's the right guy?
Well, we'll find that out. And I think that's why I don't want to sit here now and say
35-year contract.
Yeah, then give him a 35-year or even a 6-year or even a 6-month permanent contract. I don't think they need to. I don't think you need to. Take time over it. Speak to the people who you need to speak to. Take time over making the right decisions. Don't be rushed into anything, because this is a big appointment for United, I think. You've gone through you know, the chosen one stuff with David Moyes and all that sort of stuff didn't work out. You've then gone to someone in Louis van Gaal who had an incredible reputation coming in and had won trophies and had a glittering career and all that sort of stuff. Coming in, bringing that into England and see how that went down. And then after that you had almost like the obvious choice in Mourinho, you know, a proven winner, someone who's going to take United back to where they want it to be, and then that's not really worked out either. It has worked out, they've won trophies. He says that second place last year was one of the best achievements of his career, which, you know, he's tried to explain it. I still don't quite understand where he's coming from. But
I think it was decent.
It was an achievement.
But there's no parade. No one's having a parade for second, mate. Can you beans?
No.
Not when it's when City have won.
No, and neither should they. Neither should they when it's United as well, to be fair. But I think this is a really important time now as well. There's been a lot of criticism of how things have been dealt with, of the structure within the club as well. You know, Ed Woodward must be the most talked about club executive in the world. You know, there's others up there, of course, as well. But
you couldn't name 10 of the other Premier League
exactly.
CEOs like that.
You know, and that's the point that you're at as well with it, really. So, you know, he's got a massive input now and a massive say, and he'll work through things at his pace as well. And I just think it's really important that United get this right, because how many times are they going to sort of say, well, this is what's going to get us back to the glory days? You know, they've spent money, they've changed managers. You learn from one
philosophy to another. You go from David Moyes, all right, he didn't really buy a lot of people, but he brought us and has lumbered with Fellaini with us. You go to Louis van Gaal, he brings in a raft of players. Some worked, some didn't. Some was definitely, like Falcao and Di Maria, were definitely Woodward inspired, should we say. Whether or not Louis got the chance to rubber stamp them or what, I'm sure he would have wanted a fit Falcao, whether it was Falcao post-knee surgery that only played 90 minutes once. The jury's out on. Di Maria getting a fucking bin, but like there's been some mad signings that don't really fit any kind of pattern. And the one thing I look jealously over at City is, and I look at the pattern of signings and I go, I know what you're trying to do. Even if 100% of them don't all succeed, I can see where you're aiming to be.
Yeah, they're looking at the squad.
Liverpool signings.
Well, Liverpool, I'm trying to remember this stat, and it might be wrong, so don't quote me.
Definitely quote him.
If it's wrong, but I think they've signed something like 18 first-team players since Klopp took over. And of those 18, only one has left permanently, which is Ragnar Klavan, and only one has left otherwise, which was Alex Manninger, who was a fourth-choice keeper anyway, who retired at the end of the season for Liverpool. The rest of them are either in the first team, still in the first-team squad, or are out on loan at the moment.
Yeah, contrast that to Jose's with Zlatan,
yeah,
Mkhitaryan.
And that contrast that to Jose, contrast that to Van Gaal. It's hard to do it with Moyes because he wasn't there long enough, but
that's still in the team, unfortunately.
That shows you. I'm Matter, don't forget.
He was definitely not David Moyes.
But that shows you.
Don't even get credited to him.
No, it's still under his era though. Come on, that shows you though, like the clear thinking and planning and structure that's gone into all of that. City similar lines. I know you've had examples like buying Bravo and then buying Edison after that,
it was the fact he was allowed to go. That didn't work. Fix it.
Yeah.
Whereas
and he'd already jettisoned Joe Hart before that, which up until that point as well was, you know, an absolutely ginormous call. You know, you're talking about ousting the then England number one. A figurehead of the club as well. Remember, he'd been there. You know, he's one of the longest serving players, if not the longest serving player too, and you know, a big personality around the place as well. So he'd been backed 3 times really in the space of a couple of years. But it was working towards a philosophy. It was working towards the plan that the club had, that the executives had, that the coaches around the place had, that Guardiola had, that the owners had.
Van Gaal's is a totally opposite. You've literally bounced into 3 different ones from Solskjaer there to Mourinho to Van Gaal. Louis came in. I only found this out a couple of months ago. When Louis came in, he got the entire squad from 18s upwards together, and he said there's 15 spaces available in my team for first teamers, and the other 10 will come from the academy. And when you look at what he achieved in 2 years, or what happened in the 2 years he was here, he was definitely working his way into having that.
Yeah.
Mensah looked incredible. Rashford looked like this unbelievable player that had kind of popped out of nowhere. The likes of Weir and Rothwell and that, they'd been given an opportunity.
Tyler Blackett started the season first choice, I think.
There was all these players who'd come in, been assessed at least, and we find out whether they can sink or swim. Andres Pereira given his opportunity. The infamous MK Dons game where
Jesse
we find
Lingard
out
started that first Premier League game against Swansea, I think,
so
as well. Yeah.
He was definitely following his own philosophy. Then you bring Jose in, who he goes, I want proven winners right now, then I'll worry about the academy and that later, which, to be fair, a lot of fans wanted. We want trophies, we want titles, we want to be back competing amongst the league. Well, you don't do that with Tyler Blackett and Donald Love, even no matter what they could have. Even Marcus Rashford, let's be honest with ourselves, you're not doing that with him in the squad at 18, at 19. I remember having debates on Full-Time Devils when he came in. Does Marcus Rashford go on loan now Jose's come in? Is he going to get game time under him? Played 150 odd games for United now, which is incredible.
I think he played more than anyone else under Jose, didn't he?
I think he played in every matchday squad, and De Gea didn't, because he was giving Romero game time in the cups.
True.
So, and then you come in with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and I don't know how it ended up like this. With, I think Jose probably didn't get the full reign of the transfers that he would want, but I think when you look at the way the squad ended up becoming, the manager we've got now is more fitting of the squad. I think Jose would still have been I think Jose would have been a huge success if he'd have followed Fergie, because that team was more suited to what Jose was about.
In terms of Evra, Ferdinand, Vidic, Giggs, Rooney, Van Persie,
winners.
Yeah, and older players and a certain type of professional, I guess, as well, which, I was listening to what Jose was saying over the weekend on Bein Sports. That was one of the things he was talking about.
I haven't actually seen. I've seen people talk about it, but I haven't actually seen it.
It's interesting. You know, you might not agree with what he's saying. You might think he's not talking sense. You know, you might think he's...
Is he still in the hotel? Has he fucked off yet?
He's damaged limit. What, in the Lowry? Oh, no, he'd gone on the day, I think.
Did he?
Yeah, I think
that's a fucking right bill, that, innit? Oh my God.
Yeah, it certainly is.
Even if he just had like 3 chocolate bars over the course of his stay, that's just put it into 4 figures.
Let's be honest. If we're in a hotel suite for that long, we're using the minibar, aren't we? Come on, everyone's got.
I think some of the results that we've had, he heavily used.
He's tried everything in that minibar. Yeah, I'd imagine.
What's this, Malibu?
Yeah. With what?
Yeah,
but I think as well. Like, you know, going back to what we were saying before, United need to get this right, and I think almost in a way they've been given a really good opportunity to get this right, because Solskjaer has done so well so quickly. So it's taken all the pressure off. You imagine if Solskjaer hadn't started very well, the pressure that would have come from everyone, you know, and the way we would have been talking about. Yeah, but
I can't picture it. I can't picture what it would have been like. Because
it's gone so well.
One, because it's gone so well, and 2, because of the way he speaks. I think the way he speaks, because he is so refreshing and honest. I mean, I really love.
Did you know he would speak like that though before he was appointed?
Nah.
See, that's the thing. So,
I was texting him to come on my podcast.
Did he say yeah?
Rennie had sorted me his number out at the start of the season, and I was like, look, obviously it's 20th anniversary of Thingy. Would you like to come do my podcast? He just texted me back saying yes, okay. And I was like, sweet, I will come to fucking Norway. Let's get this shit done.
Well, he's at the Lowry now. You just go there instead, yeah.
No, I don't want to reply. I didn't phone him 5 times tonight. He got a reply. I didn't.
No.
That was a rumour.
Voicemail. WhatsApps. Direct messages.
But yeah, I think I didn't expect him to talk as perfectly as he did. I mean, I've heard him. I mean, Full-Time Devils did an interview with him a couple of years ago when he was at Molde, and he said some great things then. Yeah. And it was a big clip that we did from back then as well. And you get the vibe that he's always. I mean, even when he was Cardiff manager, he was like, "What do you think about Liverpool?" I was like, "I don't care." Like,
on message.
Yeah, it was always kind of right, but the way he's come in, I think it's just because the contrast with Jose has been so stark. I think.
Yeah, but going back to what we're saying, because he's done well, that has taken away a lot of the pressure and a lot of the day-to-day speculation and trying to work things out.
Because he was so pissed off with Mourinho, would they have come in, even if he'd have come in and we'd have lost, say, or drew to Cardiff, or we'd have picked up like 2 wins in 5 or something like that, and he'd have come in like, I'm working hard, you know, we know it's not right. I think he'd have got a lot more patience.
No, I don't mean that. I don't mean the day-to-day pressure of whether Solskjaer should be boss now. I mean about what's coming for United. And I think the fact that he's been doing well, it's taking away that layer of like what the future's going to look like, because they would have said, right, Moyes, Van Gaal, Mourinho, Solskjaer, temporary basis, you know, nothing's working here. And there'd have been far more sort of delving into what's right, what's wrong, what needs to change.
Taken away from the Glazers, you mean? Or possibly Woodward?
Not even that. Just not that sort of level of personality focus. I just mean what the club's doing. The players would have got it as well. Solskjaer, I'm sure, would have got it. Carrick and McKenna would have got it. Everyone would have got it, because we're talking about United. We're talking about a club that people expect far more of. So Solskjaer doing well has taken away that immediate sort of overwhelming pressure and focus on the day-to-day workings of what they're doing and all that.
It was definitely there.
So
it was definitely there back end of Jose's reign.
Yeah, of course it was. But because more's expected and people want to know why, you know, journalists have a responsibility then to try and find out why. You know, as fans, you want to know why anyway. You know, as anyone really in that circumstance, whether you're a United fan or not, whether you've got any allegiance to the club or not, you're interested to know what's going on. And Solskjaer doing well, I think, has allowed United now a little bit of time to take a bit of a breath. What's worked over this period? What's not worked over this period? What do we want next? They're going to appoint a director of football or someone in that type of role.
As long as they get
that will happen.
The proper responsibilities, that's a brilliant appointment for us.
Yeah, and basically that is what should happen next, because going back to what Neville was saying before, you're talking about now laying down markers about how this team's going to look going forward, how the club's going to be run going forward. United have now getting a clear vision and picture of what the future's going to look like. No matter who the manager is, they need to do that. You know, from manager to manager, you want more coherence and what we've been talking about so on before about changing philosophies and things like that. So, you know, they can use this period now. Let Ollie win his matches, and when it comes to making a decision about the manager, you know, if Ollie's an option, that's fantastic for United. That's what you'd want, isn't it? You want people giving you your problems, and you know,
it's not a bad problem to have, is it?
Absolutely.
By the end of the season, he's won everything.
Absolutely. I mean, blimey, if he goes and wins the Champions League or something like that, then he's getting the job, isn't he?
So mathematically win the league.
But you know, but no matter what, Steve, just let them take a bit of time over it. Everyone just chill out and let them take a bit of time.
You're being far too sensible.
Well, yeah, like I said before, if you want to get carried away, get carried away.
30-year contract. Right, now, I might not have the title. Thank you guys for watching. Go follow Ian. I'll put his link to Instagram. Instagram is one you use most, isn't it?
Yeah, a bit of Twitter as well, but Instagram mainly, yeah.
All right, I'll bang a link to his Instagram in the description below. Thank you guys for joining us. Obviously, Arsenal this weekend. I've got a question for you. When does Ollie's run stop?
What do you mean?
When do we stop winning? Or who beats us first?
Oh, well, it could be Arsenal, couldn't it?
It very much could be Arsenal.
I think they'll play a different team. I think you'll get people like, I think Ollie even hinted post-match, Sanchez will play, Lukaku will come in, so there'll be a lot of changes in that regard. Romero probably starts, given the way he played against Reading as well. And I imagine Emery will be full strength, I would have thought. So that's a difficult game, definitely.
It's interesting if he decides to rotate, because you think the FA Cup's such a winnable trophy. And if he manages to get top 3, top 4, which I think he's probably going to do, if he got top 4 on a trophy, no matter if it's the FA Cup or whatever, what an achievement, and what an end to a season that'd be.
He might have sucked me in, you know. He might have. This is exactly what he might have.
Are you putting out fake news?
Well, he might have sucked me in by saying, yeah, Sanchez is going to play in the FA Cup at Arsenal. Perhaps that's what he wants us to think, you know, and he'll end up turning up there with a first choice team, because there's a big break as well with it being a Friday night. There's a big break then until United play Burnley.
He's done that already, actually. What did he do? They did something with Greenwood.
What about changing what he was going to do or say? Or
I'm trying to think what it was. It might have been Jose with Valencia game when he said one of them would be on the bench or something like that, and both of them was on the bench.
This is a strong end, by the way.
Yeah, this is really tapering off badly, isn't it? Anyway, yeah, thanks for watching. Go give Ian a follow, and we'll see you in the next one. Laters.